Well, hello, friends, and welcome to From Busy to Rich, the podcast designed to inspire advisors to increase their profitability and quality of life for themselves and those they serve. With me as always is Wes Young, of course. And Wes, I know we've got some special treats in store, so why don't you kick it off and let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I mean, I'm super excited about today's podcast for a couple reasons. One is I get to do a lot of the question asking today. And who our guest is my friend Garrett Gunderson, who is a best-selling author. Right now, he has 5 books that are in Amazon's on the financial top 100, and is a great communicator, great speaker, also a great comedian, which is something that you don't see across the board when somebody's on all these other channels. And has put out some great things into the world. And for the financial community, which is our listener base, this is going to be a great day. I think it's going to be one of the best podcasts we've ever had. I've had lots of conversations with Garrett. So, Garrett, I really appreciate being on the show.
You're supposed to set the bar low, man.
That's it, man.
That
was low. You should have heard my first introduction.
Jerry Seinfeld said once he was introduced, it's like, this is the funniest man on the planet. And the crowd turned on him immediately. He's like, I have a manager that I was doing comedy for a while in finance. And so my manager introduced him once and he's like, Jerry just told him, say, Jerry Seinfeld comedian, nothing else. But it's cool. I'll do all I can to live up to the hype. And you and I have a good, chemistry together. It was cool. We got to spend some time in Austin by a good friend of ours that I listened to your podcast with, Mike, actually, Schofield. I thought it was fantastic. I'm reading his 52 Truths and as we speak right now, and he's just one of the best people on the planet. So I'm so glad he connected us, and then we're able to meet before we ever did this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, man, this is going to be a great day. I would love it just for everybody to kind of level set here. Walk us through a little bit about what life is like today, the things you're out there doing, what you're doing every day. Because I know you do a lot of stuff in a variety of different ways to help people and get content into people's hands that's going to change their lives, increase their profitability and quality of life for not just themselves but for those that they serve. And then we'll go back in time a little bit because I'd love to learn about your journey, because you were born super rich and with a lot of money. I know.
Yeah, my dad a coal miner. My grandfathers were coal miners as well. Which is
a lucrative game in finance, right? So, but no, if you could just talk to us a little bit about those 2 points in your life.
I got to tell you, I built this E124 financial firm, and I chose to sell it. November of 2020 is when it was like a spiritual moment. It was like, it's time to sell this for the next chapter. And I didn't know what that meant. What does that mean for me? And where do I go next? And I had that concluded by June of 2021. And as soon as I said, okay, I'm going to sell this, the next day I had this hernia surgery. And so I do this hernia surgery and I'm at my house. It's like I'm laying in my bed and I'm watching this Zen Diaries of Gary Shandling, the comedian. And I had been doing comedy as a hobby. And this guy, Barry Katz, who had managed like Dave Chappelle and Jon Stewart and Louis C.K. and Neil Brett, a bunch of people back in the day that I've just watched their comedy, was like, hey, I've never seen anyone do what you're doing in finance and comedy. So for a year, he's like trying to get me to agree to do this, right? He's getting me great people. This guy that wrote for Chris Rock and was in a movie with Chris Rock saying like, here's how you get past your 20 minutes. And like me actually telling people that I did comedy. So as soon as I say I'm selling the business and I have this hernia surgery, I'm watching that. I'm like, all right. So Barry calls me, how you doing? I'm like, I'm recovering. He's like, are you ready to do this comedy special or what? And I'm like, yep, let's do it on April 15th. It's called The American Ream. Is there any other day that's more of a ream than the 15th of April? That's like 5 months away, but because I decided to sell my business, I just started putting in the reps. So I go from I'm selling my business to I'm going to do financial comedy, because I thought people remember 3 times more when they laugh, number one. Number two, we could reach people that might not ever face their finances, that if we could just have them be entertained, because I feel like entertainment is the gateway to transformation. Education is instrumental, but entertainment can be the gateway to get people educated, because weirdos like the 3 of us, we love to be educated. All these people that are listening right now, they love to be educated because they want to improve themselves. But a lot of the masses are kind of stuck. And so it was this really kind of fun experience. But once I filmed it and got it on Amazon Prime. So you could literally look up Garrett Gunderson, The American Dream, and watch the comedy special on Amazon Prime. Or, as Wesley's done, you can listen to Killing Sacred Cows 2.0 on Audible. And there's actually even more of the comedy special after every single chapter relating to these financial topics. So I just had this little adventure of like creativity. But then I had mentored these people in finance, right? And one of them was like, hey, I'm hosting an event. I was like, and I connected you with him because I thought you'd be an amazing speaker at this event. And he's like, dude, I want you to come speak at this event. I was like, well, when is it? He's like, in 2 weeks. I'm like, man, but I checked with my wife. She's like, I'm going to be flying to LA. Why don't you go speak at the event and meet me? Because my kids were going through a leadership academy. And I was like, all right. So I show up. This guy's speaking, and when I walk in the room, he's like, oh, Garrett Gunderson's here. And I was like, oh, it's cool that someone knows me. Like, I don't know. I've been building my own financial firm. I haven't been really working with people in finance or they were selling insurance. I was just doing our own thing. And they're asking him questions like, I'm going to defer to Garrett. And I was like, oh, that's nice of him. I went up and talked to him. His name's Matt. He's an awesome guy. And then the next speaker gets up and mentions my name from stage. And I was like, what's going on? So after lunch, I get up. Every chair is filled, and this guy Caleb's like, so who's read Killing Sacred Cows? 100% of the hands went up. I was like, it felt really good, Wesley. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Then he goes, who's read What Would Rockefeller Do? Standing ovation. I start tearing up and crying in front of the room because I was like, whoa, I didn't realize I'd made this impact in the financial industry. I was just building my firm, and I coached and mentored a few people in the industry when they came and spent a day with me. But, it was like, this was really special. So I decided, I looked at my stats, and almost 50% of the copies of Killing Sacred Cows that we could track were bought by financial people. We think that probably 75% of the books bought of What Would the Rockefellers Do were bought by financial people, right? And this is a book that sold hundreds of thousands of copies. And I was like, I should just help this industry out because it's been amazing to me. And insurance has been a never fail me strategy. It's been something that I can count on. It's helped me to consider legacy when I was just starting out and didn't have a ton of money. Even before I was married, it started to prep things. It's allowed me to, even acquire the best assets like the cabin that I love and do those consultings that my family loves to go to. We're going to this weekend. So I started to really help the financial space out, and it's been super rewarding. And at the same time, I launched this multiplier program because I feel like it's instrumental for people to make more money, keep more of the money they make, grow their money in a way that's consistent with their investor DNA, and learn how to mitigate risk, and then grow themselves and create a life they don't want to retire from. Because if we grow our money without growing ourselves, that gap is called risk. And a lot of people are risking because they don't get informed or they don't have the right team. And so I launched that, and I've got financial advisors referring their customers into it because now it gets them to do customer service without having to do it. I pay them when they get in, and they still get to do 100% of the financial transactions. So I'm just in the world of collaboration, kind of having the time of my life most of the time, but also like it's a little bit of startup mode because I sold this business with 400,000 names in our database and 2,200 monthly paying customers on coaching and consulting services. So it's been a bit of a bumpy ride. Like, I had a bit of an identity in my last business, but didn't like the way it was going. And so I chose to build my own thing. But it was like, there were days I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing comedy? That's not, that's not helping anyone to be in a comedy club, really. But it was like to make my education more entertaining and to reach more people. And then I was like, so it's just been, that's a long answer. You're like, hey, man, I asked you one question. The podcast is over. No, thanks, dude.
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks for being on the show today. No, I'm just kidding. You know what I love about that? There's so much in that. And one of the quotes that I've recently stumbled on that I love, absolutely love, is all of us have two lives: the life we live and the unlived life within us. And what you're describing there is such a unearthing of the unlived life within you. And it's not even that life's bad. It's not that life's not going well and you're enjoying it. But it's, what is the next thing? What is the thing that my next iteration, my next jump that's possible out there? What's that unlived life within me? And what's great about that is when you make the decision to go, okay, I need to do this in order to decide what's next. And then what I love is when he told you about the comedy, hey, we're going to do this comedy special. And you're like, man, that's pretty close. But also sometimes the inspiration's the deadline, right? It's like, there it is. I better get focused, and it focuses your energy, your human life value around this one activity that's going to, what turns out as a big launching point for what your next unlived life that was in you it was.
And it's kind of nice to have the ignorance of not knowing everything it's going to take. Like,
Absolutely.
I call that, it's not fun to suffer the future. To look for oh man, I got all this to do, and how am I going to get all this done? And, that's suffering the future. I was naive enough to be like, let's do it. And then I just remember him being like, hey, I'm going to introduce this guy, Marty Callner. He won an Emmy with Seinfeld. He did a bunch of George Carlin specials, and he did a bunch of, Robin Williams specials and Chris Rock. And I was like, cool, I'm a rookie, but let's do it. And we just hit it off, right? And this guy gave me amazing advice. I hired him as a consultant. He ended up becoming an executive producer. And these guys, between Barry and Marty, put together 8 Emmy winners on the crew for me to do my first special. And it was like, my kids got to watch me struggle as I'm trying to figure out like how to get this on Amazon. And then, by the way, I get it on Amazon. They're like, why not Netflix, Dad? I'm like, cool, thanks, boys. I certainly appreciate that, and they got involved. My 13-year-old at the time opened for me and just crushed it. And my now 19-year-old, he would sit down anytime we were editing and watch the edits and laugh, and he loved being there for the show. And I brought out friends and family. It was just such a beautiful experience, but it was also like facing insecurities and like dealing with, man, I'm doing this at a pro level, and I was just going to do this as a hobby. And what does this mean? And man, it was like such an adventure. And now I'm like, what's the new adventure? Like, I'm ready to just claim, like, I just feel like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like a lot of the people that are different than us that are out there in finance are very Old Testament. They're very like, fire and brimstone and fear.
Yeah.
What I really think is we need a little bit more of a New Testament movement when it comes to finance, and, and people joke like, and say that I look like Jesus, probably a much older version, and they've even called me Money Jesus Events, which is flattering, but like, I look more like Disney Jesus than I do Jesus, but the thing is, I think that there's really this place for love and abundance and creating a life that you don't want to retire from, and being able to really listen to people and find like what their fears are or insecurities and help them to heal from that so they have a better relationship with money. And it's not just about waiting for 30 years to finally live their life. Like, I mean, you just live life to the fullest. You're out doing a lot of fun things. Like, I can't ever, like, why we're the same age. I think we're the same age. I think we're really close.
We're in our prime age of 46.
Like, next year is older than us. Like, we both got a lot of gray, but it's for the sophistication and the sexiness for sure. But,
that's right.
But imagine, like, I know you could retire today if you chose to. You could. You just be like, cool, you're done. But you're wiser now than you were 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
Athletes hit their peak. I mean, it's like a miracle when we see LeBron James or Tom Brady that are going into their 40s, because there's such a decline of the body and, even like how quick you could become and how quick you recover. But the thing is, in the world of business and entrepreneurship, the older we get, the wiser we become. Why not just design the life we don't want to retire from? Why not build infrastructure that when we're 70 years old, we're still engaged with clients and helping them out, but we don't have to do all the busy work because we built the infrastructure, because we built the business and the things that we don't love doing. We found people who love doing the things we think are weird and we don't want to do and that drain our energy. And I mean, that's really exciting to me, because then it says, well, what if I have an extra 80 years left, instead of people starting thinking about winding it down at 65? Like, when people lose their purpose, that is the biggest thing that causes death. I know that we know about diseases like cancer and all this stuff, but when people lose purpose, it's a cancer of the mind. And then they lose that purpose, they start to wind down. I mean, there's how many stories of people retiring and dying in months later. Like, my grandma's purpose was to take care of my grandpa. Like, she got his pills out every day. She got his clothes out. She told him how to drive. They were an amazing couple. But as soon as he died, she went from being extraordinarily healthy to dying a year later because her purpose was gone. And I think that we created purpose that we could dedicate our life to. We win the game. And that's what I'm excited about.
I love that. And, it reminds me a lot too of some of Arthur Brooks' work, where he talks about, he's a, behavioral psychologist, and he on the art and science of happiness, teaches a class at Harvard that's so oversubscribed. But he breaks it down to like our micronutrients. So of happiness, kind of like you would if you're trying to get in better shape and physical health, you've got, what are my macros? What macros am I tracking?
Yeah.
And Arthur Brooks talks about, well, there's 3. There's enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And enjoyment being that thing of, hey, I need pleasure, but I also need pleasure combined with people, combined with memories. And that's kind of the pleasure lever, because we can all, go drink 4 bottles of wine by ourselves and we'll get some pleasure in that moment. But unless you're at a dinner with friends where you're going to remember it and store it, it doesn't really create enjoyment. It's a substitute. Then satisfaction's that weird thing that only happens by overcoming something hard. Maybe even having to struggle, maybe even having to suffer a little bit, to delay gratification, to not trade the immediate for the ultimate out there. And then the last one, which is so connected to what you just said about purpose, is enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. Meaning being that thing that is all about faith, family, friends, and then work that matters to others. Work that matters to others. That's why you see the people that retire, say, okay, I accumulated, right, all this money, which we don't like that word, accumulate. I'm just going to accumulate my way to do all these things I hate until eventually I can do the thing I love. And then they had a work that actually mattered to others, even though they might not have totally been excited about all that work. It did feed them a little bit. And then they stop doing that thing and they do nothing else. So you can only go on so many vacations and play so much golf, or even in my case, hunt so much, to where all of a sudden it's like you don't have work that matters to others. And that doesn't have to be work that you're getting an income from, because hopefully you built that somewhere else outside of yourself. But without it, it's just a big thing of struggle and suffering, which is why I love everything you put out about living a life you don't want to retire from and continue. And that doesn't mean it's the same. It means that you're constantly looking for, what is that unlived life within me that I would love to live?
I love that. Yeah. How you build the life that you love. And part of it is this recognition that we've already won. If you're listening to this right now, you've got some amazing aspects within you that or otherwise you wouldn't have the consciousness to listen. And so many of us, including myself, will look at where we want to be versus where we are. And it's easy to be, oh, I want to get there. And when I get there, life will be better.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the joy is in the journey. Fall in love with the process. The win is in the work. So finding meaningful work. And what I'd say is when something's new, romanticize the newness. I always think back to, dating my wife and how fun that was. And a lot of times when we're having go up to our cabin and we're having a date, we just recount some awesome memories and relive them and what it was like. And so it's just enjoying that process of, even if I'm writing a new book, I've just found the way to fall in love with that process. It's not just about hitting, as we said, 5, my books on the top 100 of wealth management. That feels amazing. But it's the byproduct of the joy, not the joy itself. It's not about reading about yourself in the news or someone else saying something on social media. It's the actual experience that matters. The outside, if we aim for it, it starts to degrade. I can't say the word, but it deteriorates basically our joy, because we're always aiming for something versus saying, no, I'm living this life that I love, this life that I want to retire from. And the win is in the work. How do I find the joy in the process? And rather than wait to go to Italy when I was 65, we took a summer. And we went as a family, and we had 63 uninterrupted days together, and we had a blast, and we played cards. But you know what? At the end, I was done with the 4-hour meals. I was ready to get back into the game. It's kind of like when I finished the comedy special. It was okay, what's next? I had this lull of, what am I going to invent? What can I dedicate 20 years of my life to that isn't just a flash in the pan because someone else is doing it, but it really speaks to my soul? And I wrote a theatrical keynote where it's basically taking Money on the book and turning it into a Broadway play with one person. So you get to see the 4 characters inside of the book lived out. And that's been extraordinarily challenging. I was the worst actor on day one when I had my director saying, okay, you're going to act this character. It was sheer pain. And then I hired the greatest acting coach alive. And all of a sudden I got a little bit better. And all of a sudden, it's just, those were moments of intuition, but I want to romanticize each phase, not just where it is when I want to be at Madison Square Garden performing it in the next 20 years. It's just well, what about each win along the way versus just the final outcome? I think that people are unhappy when they get addicted to outcomes and they put all of their faith in the outcome, not in the process that gets them there.
Well, you are speaking the language of the people listening to this, because everybody, you don't just tune in to the From Busy to Rich podcast because you're I don't have anything else going on. These are strivers, right? They are people that want to do cool stuff. And the challenge with that is exactly what you said, is we all have this gap between where we are and where we want to be. And the gap between where we are and where we want to be never goes away. It just moves. It just transforms into something else. And the challenge with doing that gap well is totally your perspective on this. It is, I do need to have a big ambition, because that's going to fuel me to do hard things. It's going to allow me to not trade again the immediate for what I want ultimately. And it's part of that fuel. But the other part of that fuel is a grateful condition. Like, I need to remember about what has happened. What are all the things I'm grateful for, the memories I have, and then fall in love with the process. Because while there will be things that are challenging and hard, and you don't think you're ready, and the inspiration is simply the deadline, what it's going to do if you learn to enjoy it, because you're going to spend your life in that gap. Because you have wins, and those wins will come, but then it doesn't last. It's the hedonic treadmill, right? It's just constantly on the next thing. So we might as well love the gap that we're in and continue to transform that gap to another level that it makes us even happier.
I love it. Yeah. Fall in love with the process. And,
Awesome.
And I agree. Like, vision is beyond our current reach. Like, a vision is something that requires other people's ability, other people's time, because it's a collaboration game. Goals might be something you can individualistic do yourself, but like, vision is beyond. And it's like, a lot of people are afraid to speak that vision into existence. You just have to be bold enough and committed enough. And a lot of people, they're poorer than they want to be because their conversations are poor, because they discount their ability because they haven't developed it yet. And I just love raising the stakes. Like, raise the stakes. I want What Would Rockefeller Do to be the most influential book on insurance of all time. And how do I do that? Through collaboration. Getting in the right advisors' hands that know how to utilize that, so that we can get a lot more whole life in the world, so people have a whole lot more certainty, and there's an economic value to that certainty, and people that normally wouldn't think about legacy start to feel it much earlier in their life. And it's just, that's exciting to me, because now we get people that go, well, I'm not worth hundreds of millions. It's okay. I started when I was 19. I was worth thousands of dollars at the time. But I was like, I started implementing the first tenets of the entire philosophy, and that's made a huge difference for me now at age 46. And so, like, let's just make that more available and accessible. And let's change the conversation, one of scarcity to one of abundance, one of value creation instead of reduction in budgeting, one of mindful cash management over just, shrinking, because you don't shrink your way to wealth. And then really, that legacy is how we live, and the way that we invest in our heirs, and the way that we capture our philosophies and ideas, and it becomes dynamic in how we live our life and the experiences that we have along the way. And then there is no retirement, because we've enjoyed life along the way. Now, we're going to have those obstacles come up, but if our vision is great enough, we'll have the resourcefulness to get past the obstacle. It's only when our problem is bigger than our vision that we get defeated, because otherwise, it's kind of like Man's Search for Meaning with Viktor Frankl. I mean, he just had purpose. It got him through a concentration camp. Other people said, if I'm out of here by Christmas, I'll be okay. And then when they make it out, they actually died because they just gave up. And that was the most excruciating circumstances. So I think whenever I have my inconveniences, it was nothing compared to Viktor Frankl. And I can sustain, especially if I go to key relationships. And this is my 4 parts. I go, who are the people that can mentor me? Which are the people asking me questions I don't know how to ask of myself? Who are the people coaching me that have been there before that can tell me the process? Like, when I want to get super fit and lean, I have a coach, Alan. He's like, here's what you eat. If you eat this every day, and now I can't put on weight. I'm eating so many calories because I'm a fat burning machine, and my metabolism is off the charts, and I'm the leanest I was the leanest I'd ever been last year. My wife called me skinny, so I've been putting on weight of even more muscle, But it's like, once I do that formula, the coach helped me. Then there's systems and process to reinforce it. Those systems and processes allow those rituals and rhythms to show up in our life, so it doesn't get crowded out. And then finally, this is the game changer, is accountability. And I find I'm accountable when I pay someone, I pay attention. And when I report to someone, I make sure to get it done, even when it's inconvenient. So once we have these formulas designed with the life that we want, we can achieve so much more, because most people are doing it through happenstance or convenience or how they feel in the moment. And look, there's ways to get beyond those things that would sabotage success.
Yeah, what I love about that is it's like a beautiful combination of something we talk about all the time on our team, is we want to have a grounded optimism and a savage persistence. grounded optimism and savage persistence. So that optimism, there's a lot of people out there that are optimistic, but it's ungrounded. It's as you said, when it comes to risk, right? It's like, I hope this works. I think it's going to work out. But they don't do the work to ground that optimism in, well, what are you going to do to actually make it work? How's it actually going to work? Because I want you to be, because there's also ungrounded pessimism, right? We don't want that. But I'd love it when they ground that in what, and then once you ground it, you got to understand, I need a savage persistence to pursue this next iteration and push through and do the things I need to do to put myself in the best position to inherit that future that I think I want the most.
I know you're a hunter when you use the word savage. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a dead giveaway. And bow hunting is to me the perfect example of this, because I either come home with an elk or I don't. There is no in between. There is no almost. It's just like, did I get one or did I not get one? Right. And even what it takes to prepare myself before I get there, as far as, doing enough shots that it becomes muscle memory and that, eliminating bad habits. I mean, I shot so much I created tendonitis in my right elbow, and still I went in after having 3 or 4 years. I shot an elk with my bow. I started in 2020 was my first time. I got one the first year, which was insane because my heart rate skyrocketed when the elk got close. I was able to meditate it down to normal, and he got 25 yards away, so I was able to get it, and it was a grueling process. And then the next year, I shot one at 39 yards away and made the perfect shot, perfect choice. And I all of a sudden had this like, I'm so good. So then the next one, I shot but didn't kill, to remind me, hey man, you're not as good as you think. You just, and then this year I missed one. In front of my dad. And, he came in so hot and he stared at me for like a minute and stopped. And I scared to range him. And then I should have ranged him. And then I shot over him. He's downhill, didn't range him. And then I rushed the next shot. So I missed him twice. And I tell my dad, because he missed 3 elk one year, I go, well, does it make you feel better about missing now that you saw me? And he goes, makes me feel worse now that I know it's hereditary. Now the good news is we found one a day later, and I got him, and it was, but again, it was like adjustments, and it was like, dealing with failure and overcoming, because it felt awful missing. But I like that kind of analogy. Is there's so much fun in shooting my bow. There's such a nice thing of having a hobby where I get a lot of downloads, a lot of insights, a lot of time alone, a lot of like peace of mind. And that's not even when there's the stakes that are high that I'm hunting. And by the way, using your formula, I'm taking my dad. So we have these amazing experiences driving there and coming back and laughing. And he's wrote me a beautiful card, and it's something he looks forward to. And by the way, keeps him in shape. He's 71, bow hunting. You got to be a badass to do.
Oh yeah.
71, climbing through those mountains. And I was next to him 2 years ago when he shot his first elk with a bow, watched him do it, hit it perfect, one shot, killed it. Like, how amazing, so. And that's just, you just got to create a life where you have hobbies. I think that a lot of people miss out because they get so busy working that they burn themselves out. And that's why they start thinking about, I need to stop working, instead of like finding some respite along the way, having some time where you have time to think, and where you have like, time maybe on a river, or, walking in nature, or like whatever the hobby is. It might be gardening. It's a number of things, but especially that one where you lose track of time and it's not about making money, and it's something that you could even do on your own. I find that that's where a lot of times we can hear those whispers of divinity to tell us what our instructions are in life, because it's not the noise of the world. It's just like the whispers of the soul, so to speak.
Love it, man. Let's talk a little bit about some of these things that you've brought up already. And again, for those of you who don't have the book, you need to get the book, and we'll talk more about that. Some great additional generous resources that Garrett's offering up. Let's talk about abundance. By the way,
the best way to get the book is if they just literally jump onto my website, join my newsletter. There's a little link that will be like, hey, do you want my 3 most popular books? Money on Mass, Killing Sacred Cows, and What Would the Rockefellers Do? And 2 courses for $44.90.
Love it.
It literally, I don't make money on it, because just for shipping and the cost of the books and all that kind of stuff, I'm just building a relationship. It's a bridge to build that relationship. So anyway, you mentioned the book. I just mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And everybody should pause and go get the book. Unless you're driving, then wait till you're done driving and get it, because I'm sure you'll re-listen to this anyway. let's talk a little bit about some of these things that show up a lot. Like, let's talk about abundance versus scarcity.
Yeah, so abundance is like a viewpoint and a perspective, and our perspective, like even financial freedom is a perspective. It's a place where money is not the primary reason or excuse we would do or not do something. It's a consideration, it's not the consideration. So it's a state of being, and we can have it in a moment. Where financial independence is having recurring revenue from our assets to cover our expenses. That's something that can come and go based upon economic changes, where the other one's more like an inside game. So abundance would be like believing that profit is evidence of value creation. Scarcity would be profit is evidence of deception. You can see that out there in the marketplace. If we're looking at abundance, someone's going to think, regardless of circumstance, what's my next choice and how do I add the most value? Where someone in scarcity says, how do I take the most value? And I'm a victim of something that happened. And I would be better off if someone else did something to me, and they spend all their time wishing the past was different and pointing the finger at someone else. Or someone in abundance says, all right, what's the lesson that I could learn from this? And what can I do with that lesson to be of even more value in the world? And so fear, doubt, and worry is the mantra of scarcity, and no amount of luck or saving or discipline or rate of return or financial advisor can save someone stuck in scarcity because they find ways to destroy wealth. Where abundance is a place of innovation and ingenuity. It's a place of exchange. It's a place of service and solving problems. And it's really this place of adding value, because money doesn't really care about effort. It cares about value. And some people put effort in the wrong things, like speaking poverty into existence. I can't afford it. I don't have the time. Wealthy people, they've done something bad or wrong. And if it wasn't for the billionaires, or if the government didn't do this, or like, it's unfortunate, but it's those emotions that can hijack our actual ability to value. And Wesley, I think the biggest problem is it's hard for people to value themselves at the true value they bring. So there was a book that changed my life, Give and Take by Adam Grant. And he just said, hey, there's givers that are at the bottom and givers at the top, and there's takers in the middle. The givers at the bottom give so much without anything in return that it actually sabotages their success and creates entitlement in everybody they give to. There's other givers that give, and they're value creators, but if they give to someone and it creates entitlement, or if someone doesn't value what they bring, they stop giving to that person because it's not actually value anymore. It's destroying value. And takers just look to take value. So I think it's really about valuing ourselves and understanding what value we can provide, and then heavily investing in those skill sets allow us to be more valuable. And that is really the key. If you're not where you want to be financially, you've really got to do the work to say, do I have the financial intelligence? Do I have the communication skill sets, whether it's in writing and whether it's in speaking, whether it's in sales, whether it's in marketing? Do I have the emotional intelligence where I can have the compassion and the empathy that I can really, truly listen to people, which obviously I've not listened much on this podcast because I'm a talker here, but
that's your role here, man. That's why we wanted you on the show. They hear me talk all the time.
So yeah, that's, abundance versus scarcity. Like, people in scarcity believe in a zero-sum game. Take what you can, hold on to what you've got, because there's only so much to go around. People in abundance realize dollars, life doesn't end when it's spent. It gets to keep circulating, and it circulates because of people adding value, serving others, solving problems, because of goods, experiences, and service that's happening. And so the more times money exchanges hands, the more wealth is created. People in zero-sum game think if you have a piece of pie, there's no pie for me, not realizing that there's more pie that can be baked. There's more things that are grown. It's more that it's about how do we expand the pie. And when we can understand that, we stop limiting ourselves and limiting what we bring to other people. Like, what happens if we fully give? Like, when I meet someone, like when I met Mike Scoba, I was like, well, what can I do to add value to him? I'm like, well, I went and spoke at his event, and I started making connections for him. And I was like, I just thought of ways like, how can I add value? Because the same way he's like, you need to meet Wesley. He's amazing. And you need to meet this person. Here's another podcast for you. And what are you looking for? And by the way, one of the big problems people have, and I just met with someone yesterday that I've known for almost 20 years now. They said the biggest lesson is, once I asked him, hey man, like, what is it that you're looking for? And how can I add the most value? You know who I am and how connected I am. Is there anything I can do for you? And he said, I'm good. And I said, don't ever do that again. You obviously are growing. So what are you looking for? If I don't know, I probably know the person that can bring it to you. And so many people say that they're fine, they're good, instead of saying, hey, I want to be on more podcasts. Hey, I want people to license my content. Who do you know that would be great to license that content that would help them grow their practice? Hey, I'm looking
Yeah.
for amazing people that could be part of my team as coaches or as setters that talk to everybody that buys my books to find out if there's a way for us to serve them. Like if I can ask for things, and by the way, when I provide something for someone, I feel better about myself. They feel better because they got the value, but I feel better. We both win. And that's
Absolutely.
the game of abundance, is you find ways to win together.
What I love about that is it's one of the things we talk about in our class Transform all the time is just a little practice before you go into any meeting is, God, help me to want something for this person, not from them. Help me to want this for this person, not from him, because it changes your mood. It changes your atmosphere, and you do get to that abundance, that giving. Now, I do think you have to be ready, as you said, to go when the question comes, hey, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And you go, you could probably help like this, but that just help me to want something for them, not from them, because most people, it's the opposite mindset when they go in. It's, well, I know I need to pay my mortgage. I know I need to pay the employees. I need to do this. And so I hope this goes well in a way that they pay me. And of course, that's not absent. Businesses need to make money. What people do make money. But if the fuel you're using is that versus the, I want something for you, people sense that through the air. It really is.
I spoke and did comedy for 20 billionaires. And it was a crazy setup because the person before me was an MD and the Huntsman family donating $150 million to mental health. And he talked about suicide for 30 straight minutes. And I'm like, well, you should probably go on earlier than later and get these guys feeling better. I was like, great, suicide into comedy. I was able to make it work, but I ended up bringing everybody a copy of Killing Sacred Cows. So here, a book I wrote in my 20s. I'm like, I think this holds up for billionaires, because the person that read it, that had me there, was like, this changed my life on how I focus on cash flow and how I invest. And then I gave him this wine tool, because my dad was a coal miner, and the handle was made out of coal from my dad's mine. And then I just said, hey, this is to remind you of all the hard work it took you to get here and to celebrate the wins along the way. So I gave, but then some were like, what can we do for you? I was like, you know what we can do for, I'm like, I'm trying to get my comedy special on a streaming service. Do you guys know production companies? Like, oh, Bill here, they did Christmas Chronicles. He's connected. So he connected me to someone, right? And I asked the guy that Jesse was hosting, and he's like, yeah, let me open up my Rolodex. And eventually there was a financial guy that loved my books that connected me to someone that made the thing happen. They got it on the streaming service. I just asked, but I gave first, and I gave all that I could to the group. And then when they said, what can I do for you? I was allowing it to receive. And some people be like, well, this is, these are billionaires. I'd be afraid to, no, I was like, no, I'm going to give, and I'm willing to ask when they ask what they can do for me,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Couple more things here, but as we wrap up, this is because we are serving a financial community of advisors. And one of our big things about being a true holistic advisor is really that I love Carl Richard's definition of a meaningful financial planning. It's about the alignment of the use of capital, time, talent, energy, attention, money with what you really care about. And if we're really doing that, taking the whole big picture, the person's human life value and the assets they have, how they're moving through life from where they are to where they want to go. One of the components we talk a lot about all the time, and you and I discussed, is this family bank philosophy, which you've written extensively about. Can you speak to that just a little bit here to our community?
Look, it's really this Rockefeller method concept. And the Rockefeller method comes down to 2 core factors and 3 peripheral factors. And by the way, this worked for all of the executives that worked for the Rockefellers. They're on their 6th generation of passing on wealth. And we all know shirt sleeves are shirt sleeves, rice paddy to rice paddy, depending on the culture you're talking about, that within 3 generations, most wealth is destroyed. And that's what kind of happened with the Vanderbilts, who had so much wealth. And so the Rockefeller method is they're buying permanent, whole life, properly structured insurance that they know is going to be around a day longer than them, and on every one of their heirs. And they set up asset protection trusts to own it and receive those benefits. So there's an instruction manual that comes with it. So it's not just nobody's entitled to anything. It's now there's a family bank, so they can finance their kids' businesses. They could finance the homes. They can earn the interest rather than necessarily have to pay it to a bank. And we know how many hoops you usually have to jump through. And by the way, the best time to get money from the bank is when they want to give it the least. It's when there's a lot of distressed assets. It's when everybody else can't get access to capital, and those with capital get to buy everything and make money on the buy. And so it's insurance and trust. But then on the peripheral side are the family legacy rings. Number one is a family office. And I know that you guys offer very comprehensive financial services where you've got like, people that are quarterbacking things for everybody, and that you're looking at the corporate structure, and you're looking at, the asset protection, and you're looking at the, taxes and all of the investments. And so that family office concept was, I think, popularized by the Rockefellers. They were so wealthy, they could just have a firm working just for their family, hence family office. So you can have a fractional family office, a virtual family office. It's become more accessible to people over time. The second is the family constitution. And the family constitution is, imagine taking the most important signposts that you could leave for future generations. What were the mistakes that you made that you learned from? What were the ideal philosophies that governed your success? What were the principles that led you to the most solid ground? And capturing that so the future generations have a preamble to their trust that says, here's how we're going to dynamically look at this. So that it comes not with legalese, but the very soul of this family and what matters most to us. And so that family constitution governs what the trustees do when the main person dies, and it moves on to the next generations. The final piece is the family retreat structure. How do you invest in your heirs to make them stewards over what's coming so that they get a heritage, not an inheritance? An inheritance is money that they blow, and we've seen that where it's just divided, distributed, and destroyed because they get it at age 32, 42, 52. They might be going through a divorce or an addiction, or they might not know that the money's coming in, and all of a sudden it comes in and they drop out of school or they stop working, and it becomes something really detrimental instead of a blessing. So the family retreat there's 3 core factors. My friend Rich Christensen taught me this because he spoke at Harvard, and they set him up with a theologian for dinner. And he's like, look, every religion and every corporation and that has sustained have 3 things in common: rituals on a daily basis. So a lot of these, companies, they have weekly, they have like huddles on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And they're setting forth the week by having certain meetings. Then there's traditions. Traditions might be like in your religion, it might be Thanksgiving, it might be Christmas, it might be, I'm not that Thanksgiving would be necessarily religious, but like there's, Easter, depending on which religion you are. My son went to a Jewish school for a while, so there's about 1,000 holidays. Like he really went to school. There's like Shabbat and all this kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
there's certain traditions. And then there's, and in our family, we create traditions that aren't just given to us by religion or by our country. And those are things that we can look forward to. And then finally, symbols. We have symbols in our family. We have a family crest, and it stands for who we are. And there's symbols that mean something. And there's a big metal medieval crest above our mantle at our cabin that our kids were part of making and creating based upon what our values were. And so when you have rituals, traditions, and symbols, and then you have regular retreats, those are kind of the traditions to have conversations and add some fun to it so people want to be part of it. You start to influence and tell the stories that make up who you are as a family and what it took to get there. Like if you want to kill a family, my buddy Scott Donnell says you killed it, or it might be Chris Smith. These are 2 guys that work in this arena. They say you just killed the chief storyteller. And so it's like, what if you told 20 stories of resilience and triumph so that your heirs understand that everything doesn't go according to plan? Not everything's always perfect, and you can feel off course, and you can feel a little bit isolated, or you can have bouts of scarcity or times where you even feel like a victim. But when you're in isolation, it prolongs it. When you actually speak to the family and you hear of the stories of a great-grandfather or a grandfather or a dad or a sister or whatever it is, grandmother, all of a sudden they go, wait, we've gotten through this before. And they can feel inspired and they don't feel alone. So the family legacy readings, this Rockefeller method at the center with the insurance and the trust. And then really just, we've got the family constitution, the family office, and the family retreat. This is the key to creating sustainable wealth, where now you're not even having to use the normal banking system in the future. You're not paying interest, you're actually earning it. And you're 1 generation away from doing it. There's a guy these guys, they do boss retirement. They just are absolutely monsters in the annuity space. And they're great dudes, the Thacker brothers. And they talked about how 20 years ago, they found the best real estate deal ever. And they tried to buy it, and someone else bought it because they could close in a couple of days. So they were smart enough to take this guy out to lunch and say, I don't understand how you had the ability. He's like, oh, well, my grandfather bought a bunch of whole life. We have $40 million of cash value. So we just buy the properties and refinance them afterwards. And so you just get the good deals. And it's like, that's what can happen in a family bank. And it's not generations. It's a generation away. It's
Yeah.
your clients making one loving choice and decision while they're still alive. And whether they're insurable or their spouse is insurable or their kids are insurable, or even if you don't have kids, there's anything that matters to you, nieces, nephews, and charities, we can actually make this huge contribution by having the death benefit come along for the ride as a fixed income allocation. When
Yeah.
we look at the major mutual insurance companies, over any 30-year period of time, they beat bonds. But you also have a death benefit that comes along with that. Why would you do something different at that point? When we've seen what the Rockefellers and these wealthy families, only because of the short-sightedness of upfront expenses or, what it takes to get to break even with cash value. If you're willing to be a little bit patient, this is a medium-term thing instead of just a short-term thing, you become way better off, way more benefits, way more security, way more protection. I mean, it just makes a ton of sense. I have 27 whole life policies now between the ones owned on me because I've made more money over time. I buy new policies. One's on business partners, one's on my spouse, on my kids, and it's like, that's something that I feel so much stability. And that even my wife is like, she's very conservative fiscally. So she's like, oh man, it's really nice to know that that's there. She's like, that's the sleep at night type of stuff.
Man, I love it, and I'm right there with you. It's a tool for entrepreneurial value creation and legacy that I think is so underutilized. And I could talk to you for hours, and hopefully we can get you back on the show here before too long. And I would love it. So we're going to do some special things, and we're going to put all this in the show notes. But we're going to give away 5 of the books, which I have right here, Killing Sacred Cows 2.0. I also recommend you get
Amazon's out of stock on that right now. So we're literally rushing to get them another 1,000 copies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so we're going to give 5 away. If you just do a review on the podcast, go in there, do a review, take a picture and send it to us, and we'll have it all in the show notes where it needs to go. And then Garrett said, if you see, and what's the best way for them to send that to you?
Yeah, if they just want to review the book, if they review the book and go to Garrett B. Gunderson on Instagram and just upload the picture on DM, or if they send it Garrett@garrettgunderson.com, I'll give them 3 audiobooks: Killing Sacred Cows, What Would the Rockefellers Do, the updated versions of both, and Money Unmasked, which is my newest book. They'll get all 3 audiobooks. They've been recorded in the last year. I hired coaches because like you said, was the use of the first Killing Sacred Cows, I spoke way too fast, didn't know what the hell I was doing. You can tell I'm reading. I've got people say, how did you do this without reading? That was what I hoped, that it just sounds like we're having a conversation. And there's a little ad lib, so it's a little bit different than just the book. And as you know, there's some real big bonuses in Killing Sacred Cows for anyone that likes to laugh that you only get in audio. So yeah, and by the way, for those that are interested, going like, what's this whole licensing thing I'm talking about? Where they actually get their name on the cover of What Would the Rockefellers Do if they qualify, and all the links point to their website so they can generate leads. They can just tell me, Wesley Licensing, when they DM me on Garrett B. Gunderson on Instagram, and I'll hook them up with like, What Would the Rockefellers Do, the license version, so you can see some of the nuances and differences in a PDF, and then we can have a conversation potentially.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, and hey, one other bonus for those of you who are signed up for Transform, you still can join, by the way, even by the time this podcast airs, because we record all our classes, so not too late. Everybody's going to get a free copy of Killing Sacred Cows 2.0. So, man, it's been a pleasure being with you today, and so look forward to our next conversation, Garrett. Thank you, brother.
Man, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for giving me the floor, and I love that you just had great insights. This whole like the life we live versus the unlived life that's a potential, and what the meaning of relationships are, and even what the meaning is doing like work that's meaningful but also requires effort. And then like I just thought those were valuable insights, and yeah, I'd love to be on another time. This was a ton of fun. And,
awesome,
maybe we'll make sure someone else has all the content so he can ask some questions too, because he could probably get me to stop as a Green Beret, like, anytime he speaks.
He could definitely stop both of us with
whatever
no
you say,
problem.
All good. Thank you again. Thank you all for listening.